Welcome back to Our Issues Birmingham. Today I have David Sher as my guest. He is the publisher of Comeback Town, which is a blog that you can view on the internet at
comebacktown.com.
Yeah, comebacktown.com. David has championed the cause of Birmingham for a number of years through this particular website, but also in his personal capacity as a citizen of Birmingham. And so we're going to talk about some things today that I hate to come down on Birmingham, but Birmingham is lacking in many respects, and we need to get a little more progressive in our thought processes. So we're just trying to get the word out, and hopefully enough people will listen to us, and maybe one day we'll effect a change. So what do you see as the biggest problem facing Birmingham and its inability to what appears to be move forward in a growth sort of way?
Right. Well, the objective of Comeback Town is to actually have that discussion, and that's the discussion of the fact that other cities have consolidated their county and city governments together. We have not been able to do that at Birmingham, and that has just about hampered us from doing anything significant.
And what he's talking about is the fact that Jefferson County, which is where Birmingham sits, of course, is comprised of 37 or so different municipalities, each with their own individual government, which has to be a waste of resources.
No, absolutely, but it's not just the county that's the problem. You have the city of Birmingham that is about 200,000 population, and metropolitan Birmingham has about 1.1 million. So the city only represents about 19% of our metropolitan area. So consequently, it really doesn't have a lot of the resources of clout that it needs in order to get anything done. Then you have the issue with the county with 37 different municipalities, but even to make it worse is that you have 5 county commissioners that are elected by district. So you don't have a single individual who wakes up every morning and says, what's best for Jefferson County? And so oftentimes county commissioners, though they're trying to look out for the county, will make decisions that they think is best for their constituency, which is how they're elected, and that's supposed to be how it works. And then you have one other thing, is that you have lack of home rule because of our state constitution. Yeah. The county commissioners can't make any of the big financial decisions, so you can't even hold your county commissioners responsible for what they do because they don't have the authority.
Well, of course, we have a new county commission in place at this point, and although we are taping before election, it is anticipated that for the first time in a long time, we will have the same county commission for the next term that we've had in the past term.
That appears to be true.
I would say that would be a positive thing in terms of continuity of leadership, and hopefully that will have some bearing on them being able to put a plan together and at least move it forward in some way.
Yeah, I agree 100%. You know, a lot of people are oftentimes down on the county commissioners, but this particular group inherited something that was just, you know, they didn't create the problem of the bankruptcy, but they had to deal with it, and they got us through the bankruptcy one way or the other. And Jefferson County has continued to have problems. Even the tornadoes that came through caused havoc to Jefferson County. And so to be able to accomplish all of that, with lack of funds and everything going against them, I thought was pretty remarkable.
Well, I want to talk about transportation at some point, but before I get to my particular pet peeve, we live in a city whose transportation system, at least in my opinion, is woefully inadequate. Would your idea about combining efforts and resources affect that, you think?
It possibly could. I think the biggest detriment that you have right now for funding for public transportation is the fact that in our state constitution, it says specifically that any taxes that are raised can only be used for roads and bridges. So consequently, even if you had a groundswell of people who wanted to try to use some of that money for something different like public transportation, they're unable to do that right now.
So when we get federal funding for certain things, the money that comes in, it can only be used for roads and bridges?
Oh, this is for taxes. Taxes raised within the state can only be used for roads and bridges. We've had opportunity.
Well, that's why we're always seeing changes made to our interstates. I mean, we're adding lanes and rebuilding bridges,
and that's important. I mean, you have to do that, but that does mean we're only one of, I don't remember, 4 different states in the United States that won't allow any funding for public transportation. So, but it does tie the hands of anybody who wants to get anything done.
So when you say funding, you're talking about local tax dollars?
No, state tax dollars.
Yeah. Any
state tax dollars. Now, Shelby was in a position for a long period of time to be able to really help us with our...
Senator Shelby.
Senator
Is that who you're talking about?
Yeah, Senator Shelby was able for many years to be able to give us some significant funding that probably could have been used for public transportation, but it required an 80-20 match. We could never come up with the 20. So that made it where we just couldn't get it done.
Well, so should we just resolve ourselves to the fact that we're never going to have a viable public transportation system? I know we have a transportation system, but like I said, it doesn't address everyone's needs.
It doesn't, but I hate to use the term never because you just don't know what the circumstances are going to be in the future. There could be things that came together to make something happen.
Well, the changes to 280 were helpful, I think.
They were definitely helpful. But, one of the reasons that you didn't get the big fix on 280, again, was a government consolidation issue. You have 5 different cities along 280 in 2 counties.
Yeah.
And none of them ever could get together to do anything about 280. So they ended out with a fix, which is nice. I don't know how it'll work in the long run. And you can see that problem manifested all the time. I mean, take Valley Avenue, which just happens to be right near this studio. It was in the Birmingham News and AL.com a couple of weeks ago that's one of the road is in such terrible shape. And one of the problems is it winds in and out of Birmingham and Homewood. So you don't have a municipality that said, well, let's just put this whole thing together.
But we do have sidewalks on Valley Avenue. This is Our Issues Birmingham. We'll be right back. Don't go away with David Sher. Welcome back to Our Issues Birmingham. Today, David Sher is with us, and we're talking about issues in Birmingham and either the progression of Birmingham or lack of progression of Birmingham as we see it and growth. We talked about transportation. One of my pet peeves, I do travel a lot, is why can't we have Uber in Birmingham? And what happened when they recently attempted to come here and were thwarted? How can that be a bad thing?
Well, I'm not an expert necessarily on Uber. In fact, I have never actually used the service, but I did write a blog about it. So I got lots of feedback from lots of people. First of all, we don't need to feel sorry for Uber. They just raised funds for capitalization that valued it at $17 billion. So they're going to have the resources to do whatever they want to do.
You mean they will stay in business without Birmingham?
I think they might manage to do it.
And Tuscaloosa has run them off, I think.
Well, they've had problems. This is not the only market that they've had problems in. California is having a big fight with them right now. One of the problems that they've run into is that they charge based on demand at certain times, and that has created some kind of backlash from some people who just said they weren't aware of that, though Uber claims that they tried to do the right thing.
I wasn't aware of that. For those of you that don't know, Uber is a private automobile transportation service, much like a taxi cab, but much more efficient. And so I think there is conflict between those that operate taxis and the competition that would be brought about by the arrival of a company like Uber.
Yeah, and Uber has other competitors. They're not the only one.
I saw that.
They have several other. If you probably look to the future, go up 5, 10 years, 15 years, whatever it is from now. There's a lot of people think that you won't necessarily need to have your own automobile anymore. That you'll be able to use car sharing because there are car sharing sites right now, or you might be able to use a service like Uber that'll pick you up and take you everywhere. So, as the internet has come about, you've seen lots of industries that have just totally been destroyed and new things have taken their place. And, you're going to have self-driving cars and other things, and I think this will all be part of the...
That troubles me. Self-driving cars, although some people it wouldn't be much different.
In many respects, you can understand the city council. They have one rule that says you have to have a certain amount of insurance and the drivers have to meet certain level of qualifications. And I think you have to have some kind of fairness between the two. But unfortunately, what happens is the end result is you have some new technology that is going to suffer before they finally get up and running.
Well, I mean, that makes me wonder, why couldn't the cab company develop a similar technology?
And they probably will if they want to be competitive, because unless they're completely not paying any attention, that's the nice thing about all this, creates competition. Yellow Cab and others are going to have to do a much better job in order to remain competitive, or they'll be out of business.
Let's talk about downtown Birmingham. The reason I mentioned the Uber is because it came up in the context of Uptown.
Right.
Uptown, is it hanging on? Is it doing okay?
Uptown,
I hear positive vibes from what I hear about it.
Well, first of all, most everybody said the city was crazy to do it in the first place.
Where they did it?
Where they did it, okay? It's 100% occupied. There would probably been, most of the people, the population would have probably bet against that happening. Now, they were smart because they didn't build this huge thing that, that was going to take years to fill up. But it's 100% occupied right now. And people that go down there say that they really like it and they're having a good time. And then, it was really important for the Civic Center because they have conventions and other things. There was not any place to eat, maybe except a Subway. Now we can bring in conventions and you have entertainment and places.
You don't
to
need
eat.
transportation. You can walk.
Right. It's right there. And interestingly enough, it's been good for the neighborhood. People have used that as a destination where they actually come to go to some of those restaurants, because some of the restaurants that are there are no place else in Birmingham.
So you're hearing that they are doing business. People are showing up. I'm not a big attendee of Uptown. It's because I live out in the suburbs, and once I get home, I tend to not want to come back.
Anything I tell you is anecdotal. I have no other than the fact that it's 100% occupied. Yeah. I know that's a fact. And, a lot of that has to do with Bear Properties. Bear's the one who took over the management of leasing it out. And Bear has just had a track record that's just been hard to beat. They basically did the Summit. On 280, there was something called the Dirt Pile where the Whole Foods went in. Both of those project people said, you'll never get that to do. And both of them, they were told they couldn't do Uptown, and they did Uptown and have it 100% occupied.
Which brings me to the Pizitz building.
Mm-hmm.
They have that one too, don't they?
They do, and they've held that building for a really long time. And they've worked really hard, from what I understand, to try to get the financing they need in order to get that project put together. And again, I have no inside information, but the rumor mill has it that they've got their financing in place, and it's just a matter of time before they make the announcement of construction.
Well, I sure wish they would do something with it. It's certainly an eyesore,
well,
as it currently exists.
Well, I think if you look over on the south side, Midtown, where you had the park and Regents Field, and now you're having everything kind of explode around it, I think you'll see the same. I think that Pizitz is the same thing for downtown. Because once you get that project right in the heart of the center of downtown, the north side of downtown is going to explode with all kinds of activity and other things.
They announced a grocery store, didn't they?
Yeah.
Publix?
They
Publix
did.
is coming in?
Right. They've announced the Publix, and the developer who is doing the Publix has bought some additional property since they made that announcement. So evidently the project is even getting larger. And if you look around the ball field right now, there's all kinds of apartment complexes that are being built around it. Rotary is building what they're calling the Rotary Trail that's going to go all the way to Sloss for biking and hiking and so forth like that.
Yeah, I saw that.
And so, if you walk over into that area and you have the park and the ball field and all the construction of the apartments and the breweries and the Rotary Trail, and you look up and you see Children's Hospital, and UAB dominates the whole section over there. It's just, and you have to remember, if you went back a few years and looked to where the park was and where Regent Field was, it was nothing but a place full of trash and nothing.
Yeah. Well, we're making progress, I would say.
I know we are.
I'll be right back with David Sher. Don't go away. This is Our Issues Birmingham. Welcome back to Our Issues Birmingham. David Sher is sharing his insight into the growth or lack thereof of the Birmingham community. And we have focused on some positive things, but one of the negative things is the lack of job growth in our community. What do you think accounts for that?
Okay, well, let's talk about what the lack of job growth is.
That'd be good.
So that people understand. From 2001 to 2010, when they did the last census, Birmingham, and I'm talking about Birmingham Metro, not the city of Birmingham. Because
the 1.1 million.
The 1.1 million people. We actually lost jobs during that 10-year period. And the BBA, or what was the Chamber of Commerce.
Well, when you say lost jobs, is that because corporate is moving away or out? Okay,
let me let me get to the numbers, and then I'll talk about what I think might or might not have happened. So if you compared Metro Birmingham to all of our peer cities, and even the other larger cities in Alabama, we are the only metropolitan area that lost jobs. And in 2011 and 2012, far after the recession ended, we continued to lose jobs. Of course, that makes it very difficult for young people who want to stay in Birmingham to stay here if the jobs are not here. Now, why is that so? Well, I'm a firm believer that it's our government structure that's causing the problem again, because we don't have the vision and adequate resources in order to do the types of things that have to be done. Like, we're competing with Nashville, and we're competing with Charlotte, we're competing against Jacksonville. These are all cities with Louisville. They're all cities that have a county city government, and Birmingham does not. And you take just something simple, the fact that Birmingham wanted to keep the hospital on 280 that was out in Irondale. Trinity. I was trying to think of the new name of it, but I couldn't think of it. Trinity Hospital. And so they offered $50 million for them to stay in Birmingham. Or you take...
Which had to hurt Irondale.
But it goes back and forth. The cities are all paying big bucks to try to recruit people within their own, within the metropolitan area. You had Gus Mayer, who was in Homewood. The city of Birmingham, gave them $500,000 worth of incentives to do that. The car dealerships are all getting money to stay in the city of Birmingham. So I think at last count, which is well over $100 to $120 million, we've spent stealing from each other, where if Nashville or other cities would have taken that $120 million or whatever and recruited businesses that weren't in the metropolitan area to come to stay there. So where we're losing our public companies and some of the bigger companies, our competition has the resources and the foresight in order to grow their jobs.
So what are they telling companies in trying to recruit them to come here? Because surely the companies are able to see that themselves. Were they promising them anything? What's to give?
No, what they're doing in turn, well, obviously they're trying to figure out incentives and other things that they can do, but you have an issue where we've had big announcements of big businesses that have come to Mobile and to Huntsville, right?
That's true.
None in Birmingham. And so if you don't have those...
Does Mobile and Huntsville have the same kind of government?
No. I mean, if you take Huntsville, it's just interesting. The Chamber of Commerce, or BBA as it is now, flies to Washington every year to meet with the senators and congressmen and so forth. And Also, Jefferson County flies up there, and the city of Birmingham flies up there, and UAB flies up there, and Shelby County flies up there. Madison County, where Huntsville is, they have 150, 200 business people all together, business politicians. They all go up there at one time with one agenda. So they all are asking for the same thing. In Birmingham,
in a united front.
I had a congressman tell me one time when we were in Washington, the city was up here. This was a while back. The city was up here and the county was up here. They showed us what their priority list were. There was not one single common item on the list. And so we don't know what we're supposed to do to help you guys because you don't know what you want. Because there's no, you just don't have the cohesion of having a county city government where everybody kind of decided this is what we want for ourselves.
Well, without changing the entire structure of government, could there be created some sort of liaison between the two with a point person, or is that a clash of ego?
I think those things have been tried in the past. The thing people always say is what we need is really good regional cooperation. And I've heard that all my adult life. It just never happens.
And that would take community resolve.
I mean, you have different entities that are looking out for their own specific interest. Vestavia's looking out for Vestavia, Mount Brook's looking out for Mount Brook, Trustful for Trustful. But no one's getting up every morning and say what's best for our region. That person does not exist.
Well, we need a czar. You want to be the czar?
Maybe we could do it together.
We co-czar. Well, it's the conclusion of this year, and perhaps next year will bring us some more unity. We'll see what happens. This is Our Issues Birmingham. Hope you've had a great year, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.